Good morning, my dear students. Today we are continuing with our DP Chapter 4 Electoral Politics. Students, in our previous lecture, we were studied about voters' list, nomination of the candidates, election campaign, and counting of votes. Now, today I will explain you about what makes an election democratic. Now, in this, I will explain you about Independent Election Commission, mass level popular participation, acceptance of election results, and free and fair elections. Now, students, what make elections in India democratic? We get to read a lot about unfair practices in elections. Newspapers and television reports often refer to such allegations. Most of these reports are about the following: inclusion of false names and exclusion of genuine names in the voter list, misuse of government facilities and official by the ruling party, excessive use of money by rich candidates and big parties, and intimidations of voters and ragging or fraud on the polling day. Many of these reports are correct. We feel unhappy when we read or see such reports. But fortunately, they are not on such a scale so as to defeat the very purpose of election. This becomes clear if we ask a basic question: can a party win an election and come to power not because it has popular support but through election malpractices? This is vital question. Let us carefully examine various aspects of these questions. Now students, Independent Election Commission. One simple way of checking whether elections are fair or not is to look at who conducts the election. Are they independent of the government? Or can the government or the ruling party influence or pressurize them? Do they have enough power to be able to conduct free and fair election? Do they actually use these powers? The answers of all these questions is quite positive for our country. In our country, elections are conducted by an independent, very powerful election commission. It enjoys the same kind of independence that the judiciary enjoys. The Chief Election Commissioner, CEC, is appointed by the President of India. But once appointed, the Chief Election Commission is not answerable to the President or the government. Even if the ruling party or the government does not like what the Commission does, it is virtually impossible for it to remove the CEC. Very few election commission in the world have such wide-ranging powers as the Election Commission of India. Now, functions of Election Commission in India. Election Commission or EC takes decision on every aspect of conduct and control of elections from the announcement of elections to the declaration of result. It implements the code of conduct and punishes any candidate or party that violates it. During the election period, the EC can order the government to follow some guidelines to prevent use and misuse of governmental power to enhance its chance to win elections or to transfer some government officers. Now, when on election duty, the government offices work under the control of EC and not the government. In the last 15 years or so, the Election Commission has begun to exercise all its power and even expand them. It is a very common now for the Election Commission to reprimand the government and the administration for their lapses. When election officers come to the opinion that polling was not fair in some booths or even an entire constituency, they order a repoll. The ruling party often do not like what the EC does, but they have to obey. This would not have happened if the EC was not independent and powerful. Now, students, mass level popular participations. Another way to check the quality of the election process is to see with whether people participate in it with the enthusiasm. If the election process is not free or fair, people will not continue to participate in the exercise. Now, people's participation in election is usually measured by the voter turnout figure. Turnout indicates the percent of eligible voter who actually cast their vote. Now in India, the poor, illiterate and underprivileged people vote in larger proportion as compared to the rich and privileged faction. This is in contrast to Western democracy. For example, in the United States of America, the poor people, African Americans, and the Hispanics vote much less than the rich and white people. Now, the common people in India attach a lot of importance to elections. They feel that through elections they can bring pressure on political parties to adopt policies and programs favorable to them. They also feel that their vote matters in the way things are run in a country. Now, the interest of voters in election related activities has been increasing over the years. During the 2004 elections, more than one third voter took part in the campaigning related activities. More than half of the people identify themselves as being close to one or the other political party. One out of every seven voter is a member of a political party. Now, students, acceptance of election result. One final test of the free and fairness of election has in the outcome itself. If elections are not free or fair, the outcome always favors the powerful. In such a situation, the ruling parties do not lose election. Usually, losing party does not accept the outcome of the rigid elections. Now, the outcome of India's election speak itself. The ruling parties routinely lose election in India both at the national and state level. In fact, in every 2 out of 3 elections held in the last 15 years, the ruling party lost. Now, in the US, an incumbent or current holding or sitting elected representative rarely loses an election. In India, about half of the sitting MPs or MLAs lose elections. Candidates who are known to have spent a lot of money on buying votes and those with known criminal connection often lose election. Barring very few disputed elections, the electoral outcomes are usually accepted as people's verdict by the defeated party. Now, students, challenges to free and fair election. All this leads to a simple conclusion. Elections in India are basically free and fair. The party that wins an elections forms government. That's so because people have chosen it over its rival. This may not be true for every constituency. A few candidates may win purely on the basis of money, power, and unfair means. But the overall verdict of a general election still reflects popular preferences. There are very few exceptions of this rule in the last 50 years in our country. This is what makes India election democratic. Yet the now, sorry, challenges of free and fair election in India. Now, candidates and parties with a lot of money may not be sure of their victory, but they enjoy a big and unfair advantages over the smaller parties and independents. In some parts of the country, candidates with criminal connections have been able to push others out of the electoral race and to secure a ticket from major parties. Some families tend to dominate political parties. Tickets are distributed to relatives from these families. Very often, elections offer little choice to ordinary citizens. For both the major parties and quite similar to each other both in policies and practice. Smaller parties and independent candidates suffer a huge disadvantage compared to bigger parties. These challenges exist not just in India but also in many established democracies. These deeper issues are a matter of concern for those who believe in democracy. That is why citizens, social activists, and organizations have been demanding reform in the electoral system. Now, students, these all are the important terms and definitions. Please read it carefully and learn. If any doubt, feel free to discuss with me. These definitions are in our book also on page number 74. So please read it carefully and learn also. Thank you, students.